Hello everyone and welcome to this audio podcast. In this audio podcast series, the LabZtorm effect v3. This is an audio podcast in around the role of an audio podcast series as well in and around the role of endogenous opioids in ischaemic preconditioning or IPC in humans. This is a storm lobostic soliloquy. And once again, this is another Storm Robotics production. Here, in this particular audio podcast, I will provide there will be a sort of an introduction, if you like, an intro into this works that retrospectively took place or had taken place in 2008, between 2008 and 2009, sort of retrospectively, in and around where there was a collaboration between the University College London, UCL, and King's College London, KCL in London, and in the sort of audio podcast synopses, there was a sort of an overview in context of an abstract, if you like, of this in and around this audio podcast series, and in and around what would be sort of what would be sort of highlighted. So in it and again, to sort of review some aspects of the synopses, but in part of this as part of this introduction, if you like. So timely brief perfusion of the ischaemic tissue is a prerequisite to improve outcomes in line to cardiovascular diseases or cardiovascular related diseases, including coronary heart disease. But paradoxically, reperfusion causes injury to the two tissues. The concept of this concept is referred to, or has been referred to in literature, as ischaemia-reperfusion or IR injury. Investigations and studies have since sort of delved into to understand different aspects in and around ischaemia-reperfusion injury or IR injury, sort of more prospectively, to develop from at least in and around aspects to pharmacotherapy and pharmacology, from a pharmacology perspective, where there have been some advances and developments in around novel treatments to minimize sort of a risk in around cardiovascular disease, and again including coronary heart disease and in around myocardial infarction, for example. And one such approach, in line to this, one such approach has been in context of a sort of a real example in context of ischaemia reperfusion or IR injury. One such approach has been referred to as ischaemic preconditioning or IPC, which entails brief durations or brief periods of alternating ischemia and reperfusion. So, for example, sort of stopping blood flow, inhibiting or stopping blood flow, but also but also allowing a reperfusion to take place as well. So IPC, ischaemic preconditioning, or IPC, entails ischemia and reperfusion, ischemia and reperfusion according to alternating periods and durations, before a prolonged duration or period of index ischemia, or in context of aspects of pharmacology and aligned to sort of a laboratory laboratory paradigm in and around this, where there is prolonged period or duration of index ischemia after alternating periods of ischemia and reperfusion. And in and around this, endogenous opioid peptides, or EOPs, are thought to play a role in ischemic preconditioning as well. And so research in and around research that had that sort of investigated aspects in and around this, sort of retrospectively, using a human forearm model to sort of mimic IR injury in and around to sort of to investigate ischemia reperfusion or IR injury. Research had taken place to assess the effect of non-selective opioids receptor antagonists, for example Naloxone, on protection, on its use as protection by and aligned with ischemic preconditioning. In addition to this, plasma concentrations of the endogenous opioid Beta-Endorphin was assessed during IPC, or ischemic preconditioning stimulus. So in around some of that basis, now to highlight some aspects that sort of introduce aspects of this works in context of the role of endogenous opioids in ischemic preconditioning and IPC in humans. So coronary heart disease, or what has been abbreviated as CHD, is perhaps one of the leading causes of death worldwide. In literature, it's been highlighted. In literature, there's been in literature, sort of retrospectively, there's been an overview in around that 3.8 million men and 3.4 million women die of CHD each year. CHD has been responsible for around 16%, or just under 20% of total deaths in the United Kingdom, in sort of retrospectively in 2006, and obviously where people are living longer, CHD is and can be an issue. So in the CHD, again, CHD has been responsible for just under 20% of total deaths in the UK in retrospectively in 2006. for example, which translated to more than 94,000 deaths. Although CHD mortality rates have been decreasing in some regard since the late 70s, due to sort of advances and better sort of management of risk factors. At the same time, CHD still poses a huge impact and burden on national resources, which has been documented as costing the United Kingdom 9 billion pounds in 2006. Mortality can be reduced by interventions that allow the rapid return of blood flow to the ischaemic or ischemia zone of the myocardium through, for example, reperfusion therapy. Early and successful myocardial reperfusion with the use of thrombolytic therapy or primary percutaneous coronary intervention or PCI has been an effective strategy for reducing the size of a myocardial infarct and improving clinical outcomes. However, reperfusion can paradoxically exacerbate myocardial tissue injury as well. So thus developing sort of novel therapies that can and will further improve the clinical effectiveness of existing reperfusion strategies for CHD represents has presented as a sort of an attractive therapeutic opportunity in context of pharmaceutics, pharmacology, etc. Intervention also takes many forms, but generally begins at acknowledging ischaemia as an entity in more depth. So this ends this particular introduction in around the role of endogenous opioids in ischaemic preconditioning in IPC in humans. This is an audio podcast in the series the LabZtorm Effect v.3. This is a Storm Robotics soliloquy and another Storm Robotics production. Thank you for listening in.